Though ultimately cut from the theatrical release of Alien, the first film infamously had a deleted nest sequence in which Ripley discovered both Brett and Dallas glued to the wall and in the midst of being transformed into eggs. Though this would eventually be restored in the 2003 director's cut of Alien, it wasn't until Aliens' release in 1986 that we saw an alien hive, or nest, up on the big screen for the first time. Interestingly, the scale of the alien hive in the second film seems to have been scaled back substantially from what James Cameron had originally envisioned. In Cameron's original treatment for Aliens, completed on the 21st of September 1983, it was originally intended that as the APC was driving towards the atmosphere processor, the colonial marines would have discovered it warped by the alien's resin. Among the refinery-like lattice of pipes and conduits, something new and not of human design has been added. It is a structure of some sort, extending from and crudely imitating the complex plumbing but made of some strange encrusted substance. It vaguely resembles the chambered nests of swallows on a much larger scale. It attenuates so gradually into the original hardware that it is hard to see where one ends and the other begins. The alien structure seems to extend far back into the complex of machinery. The plant thrums loudly, its functioning seemingly not impaired. This would be removed once Cameron wrote the first actual draft of the script. Though the resin was removed from the exterior of the atmosphere processor, Aliens would still introduce us to the interior of a large-scale alien hive that would serve as the location for several amazing scenes. Alien hives would reappear in Alien Resurrection, though not following Aliens' aesthetic, and both Alien vs Predator films, but would be completely absent from Alien 3. However, that wasn't always the case. Following years of development hell, when long-time Alien producers David Giler and Walter Hill sat down to assemble a script from all the previous abandoned concepts, in their earliest draft available, dated 10th of October 1990, Hill and Giler wrote in a scene in which Ripley and Aaron discover the beginnings of a hive, referred to in this and subsequent drafts as the meat locker, in the glassworks which would eventually be replaced with the lead furnace. The discovery followed the death of Malcolm, who would later become Dylan, after Morse inadvertently led the alien back to the library, which would also become the assembly hall, where Morse had been attempting to report his discovery to the prisoner's de facto leader. So I read now from the script where Ripley and Aaron enter the hive. Interior glassworks, near gantry. Ripley and Aaron enter. She has the axe in one hand, torch in another. The area has been transformed into an alien cocoon chamber. Walls and ceiling encrusted with alien mucus. Hives built around rotting corpses. Ripley moves forward. This is not new to her. Sound, moaning, low moaning. The cocoons, dozens of semi-transparent pods. Inside each a prisoner's body. Aaron moves forwards. He can almost make out the faces of the men in the cocoons. They seem to be... Aaron, they're not dead. What the fuck is this? Though Ripley had experience with the Hive and aliens, rather than suggest that the still alive prisoners are to be hosts for the new generation of aliens, she instead tells Aaron that this is a meat locker. It'll feed the new queen. The pair would be distracted by cocooned Andrews begging for help, but as Aaron moved towards him, Ripley stopped the warder, noticing something that we've not seen in an alien film since the very first. In the fine mist of the chamber, a narrow membrane, like a cross-section of laser light, encircles the cocoon chamber. Ripley, it's like an alarm. Step in there, and it knows we're here. Like Dallas and Barbara Cole's cocooned colonists before him, Andrews begs for death. Despite Aaron's attempt to argue otherwise, true to alien tradition, Ripley sets fire to Andrews. As they watch the flame engulf the superintendent, Ripley says, "We burn it, all of it." The flame continues to spread around the hive resin, compared by Hill and Giler to a web, and soon the entire chamber is in flames. And then the alien appears, holding Malcolm's torso. Ripley throws her torch at the alien, which is soon covered in flames itself. The alien quickly puts out the fire and retreats back towards the vents, leaving the cocoon chamber in flames. Now an inferno, hundreds of pods fully ablaze, a shrill, keening sound as the flames fully engulf the half-dead. The hive sequence would be retained in an additional draft that Hill and Giler completed 2 months later, on the 18th of December, though with some changes. Instead of Aaron and Ripley, it is now Dylan and Morse that come across the hive. Rather than the glassworks, which had already become the leadworks, the hive is actually found in the assembly hall, which had replaced the library, and instead of taking place after Malcolm's death, who had become Dylan at this point, it now precedes it. Following an exchange of dialogue between Morse and Dylan in regards to Morse's desire for a pulse rifle, the actual discovery plays out very similar to the earlier draft, with much of the dialogue actually the same. A notable change is that Dylan declares it the meat locker, with the line about feeding the Queen absent, and neither have any concern over rescuing the still alive Andrews. Alien vs Predator Galaxy commissioned one of our favourite alien artists, Declan Loftus, to visualise this scene for this video. As with the previous draft, Dylan sets fire to Andrews and the resin, causing the rest of the hive to catch fire. The alien once again makes its presence known, showing up with an unknown prison's torso instead of Malcolm's. Dylan then proceeds to be the one who throws the torch at the alien, which retreats, but rather than leave the hive this time, it hides in the blazing assembly hall. This is where the sequence of events flips around. As Morse and Dylan try to escape, the alien reappears and Dylan decides to lock himself and the alien in the assembly hall, where he faces his end at the hands of the alien. While the alien approaches, backlit by hellfire imagery, Dylan prays. The inferno grows. Dylan shoves him back through the door, locks it from inside. Then, turning back to the ghostly flickering incandescence, Dylan begins to pray softly. Morse pounding on the door. Dylan: when evil draws near, it is evil that will fail. My body will be taken, but never my spirit. High above, at the very top, from out of the flames the beast is moving. Far below, Dylan's voice. Dylan: it is the light I seek. My eyes are closed to evil. All is now a blur through the flames. Something hits the floor behind Dylan. Dylan: although evil surrounds me, I shall offer within a sacrifice of pure joy. My body will be taken, but never my spirit. The alien, looming over him. Dylan: I am ready to be judged. Now shouting, Dylan keeps his eyes closed. Dylan: the beast has made me dwell in darkness, but I will fear no evil. His voice cracks and trails off into nothingness. He's pushed his faith to the edge. Drawn by a fire alarm caused by the inferno within the assembly hall, Aaron and Ripley appear in time to watch as Dylan strikes the alien with his fire axe, slicing through one of its legs, and attempts to cause more damage. The alien savagely rips a hole in Dylan's chest and retreats through the flames with Dylan's body into an air duct. Aaron then takes up Dylan's role for the remainder of this particular draft, with the still alive Golic being the one to occupy much of Aaron's role in the finished film. Screenwriter Rex Pickett was then hired by 20th Century Fox to rewrite Hilton Geiler's previous draft. With 4 weeks to go until Alien 3 actually went in front of cameras, Pickett's goal was a complete rewrite of the second half of the script, due to character and plot changes mandated by Walter Hill, with further minor changes in the first half. This draft would see the assembly hall hive scene completely removed, and instead replaced with a small extension of a scene from the previous draft, where Golic murdered several of his fellow prisoners in the abattoir after surviving letting the alien out of waste disposal. In Pickett's draft, dated January 5th, 1991, Aaron, Dylan, Ripley and Morse, who had been given a larger presence in this particular draft, are called to the abattoir to witness the aftermath of Golic's murder of Gregor and William. They find Eric, driven to near madness by what he saw, and a cocooned Golic. When we'd last seen Golic, the alien had been approaching him, and Golic had been nodding to himself. Moving deeper into the abattoir, Dylan finds Golic, cocooned, ensconced in fluid and still alive. Apparently having taken his cocooning to be a sign of the alien's disappointment in him, Golic was heard muttering, "I'm sorry, sir." This dialogue is likely referring to the alien, as Golic had called it Sir earlier in the script. By the time the final draft was written, with Hill and Geiler taking on scripting duties once again, the cocoon hive sequence would ostensibly be replaced by the scene in which Ripley seeks out the alien in the basement. Though it was dropped from the final script, due to the hectic nature of Alien 3's production, Amalgamated Dynamics Inc. had actually started construction on the cocoons. Covering the special effects in the 50th issue of Cinefex, released in May 1992, and subsequently reprinted in 1997 in Titan's Alien The Special Effects, Bill Norton wrote about how, rather than a store to feed the Queen or for potential hosts, Fincher had apparently envisioned this sequence to be a throwback to Alien's egg morphing sequence. Borrowing from a sequence which had been cut from the original Alien, Fincher early on intended to feature the discovery of partially devoured victims being transformed into alien spores through a metamorphical cocooning process. Further supporting this concept, in the same article, ADI's Alec Gillis is quoted saying that originally Ripley's chestburster was supposed to be a regular chestburster, and that the decision to make it a queen came later. It started off as just a creature embryo, and then it was later decided to make it a queen embryo. So we had to go back, take a copy of our sculpture, and make an appliance to give it the queen carapace, the hood. It didn't have the tiny arms like the adult queen, but we thought, what the hell, maybe she grows those later. Though the quote was not attributed to anyone in particular, Norton would also state that the sudden inclusion of the queen into the narrative caused ADI's work on the cocoons to stop. The interesting thing to consider here is that the earliest complete draft for Fincher's incarnation of Alien 3 had the queen chestburster, and the need for cocoon victims remained intact. So the exact reason for the loss of the scene, whether for narrative purposes or budgetary, is unclear. Tom Woodruff Jr. would go on to say that the cocoons were begun and then killed halfway through. We were going to end up making about 20 of these cocoons, all vacuformed and stapled up. We started on 2, and then the plug was pulled because Fincher's idea was that the creature simply kills to eat. Given the number of cocoons under construction, it would be safe to assume that the work was commenced in late 1990, and that they were being constructed for the meat locker scene as originally written by Hilt and Geiler. Even though the scene was removed during writing, ADI's work on the cocoons would not go to waste though. They would complete one of the cocoons, and Fincher would use it for himself. Actually, we did finish one off for Fincher, because he liked it so much. He had it on set with him, and would occasionally climb into it for inspiration. He called it his thinking shell. These cocoons aren't something that has been extensively documented in behind the scenes footage, but ADI have previously shared a video which showed them sculpting the cocoons. And Alec Gillis has also posted some images of the cocoons in what appeared to be a later state. Personally, I think they do look closer to the egg-morphing cocoons and nests from Alien, rather than the hived up victims from Aliens, but what's your guys' takes on it? Though not exactly faithful to the film, the numerous video games adaptations of Alien 3 took us into various hived up sections of Fury. Armed to the teeth with pulse rifles and flamethrowers, the adaptations would have Ripley fight her way through swarms of aliens, and eventually a couple of levels in the hived up depths of the prison. Though not visitations to any hived up sections of Fury 161, the expanded universe would take us back to the former backwater prison colony to find it infested with aliens a couple of times. In Rebellion's first Aliens vs Predator on the PC, the fourth mission of the Predator campaign would return us to an alien-infested Fury, where we fight through recreations of locations from the film, including the assembly hall, the mess hall, the morgue, and the lead works. We would also run into the remnants of a Colonial Marines recon force that had begun to retreat, having detected a Predator vessel. In the anthology book Aliens Bug Hunt, released in 2017, a short story by Jonathan Mayberry called Deep Black saw the Colonial Marines revisit Fury 161 in 2189, 10 years after Ellen Ripley sacrificed herself to prevent Weyland-Yutani and Michael Bishop from retrieving the Queen inside of her. In Deep Black, a small recon force of 3 Colonial Marines is dispatched to Fury 161 to investigate the appearance of activity on the surface. Following the closure of the facilities on Fury, Weyland-Yutani had sent 4 research teams to the planet in an attempt to find traces of the alien. Each team came back empty-handed. However, Weyland-Yutani still left satellites in orbit of the planet, and it was these satellites that discovered the renewed activity on Fury 161's surface. What the investigating Colonial Marines found was a research vessel that belonged to the Jing-T Long Corporation, a rival corporation that was neck and neck with Weyland-Yutani, often edging them out with technological advances. The Colonial Marines found an abandoned recovery effort at the Sulaco's EEV, and plenty of blood. They also heard the crew of the Jing-T Long vessel being slaughtered, and what sounded like the cries of multiple aliens. Though the Colonial Marines weren't aware of how the scavengers found the aliens, they hypothesized that multiple facehuggers had to have been in the Sulaco's EEV to allow both Ripley and the Ox, or dog, to be infected. What if there had been more than just 2? Deep Black ends with the 3 Colonial Marines deciding that they wouldn't allow Weyland-Yutani to retrieve the aliens that were locked in the Jing-T Long research vessel. Did they just end up as another 3 corpses at the claws of the aliens? Or did they succeed in actually wiping out whatever aliens remained on Fury 161? The results of their decision is not known. The games would also give us several multiplayer levels based around Fury 161, with the most recent from Aliens Colonial Marines actually having a portion of the map covered in Hive resin. Personally though, my favourite will always be Leadworks from Aliens vs Predator 2. How do you feel about having the meat locker scene removed from Alien 3? Is that something you would have been interested in seeing? Sound off in the comments section below to let us know. If this is your first time watching a video on our channel, please head back to the main page to check out some of our other videos. If you like our content, please be sure to hit subscribe and follow us for further video uploads. Our YouTube channel is just one of several arms of the Alienverse Predator Galaxy community. Our hub of activity can be found on avpgalaxy.net, where we post news and written articles, as well as an active message boards. We're also on all the social media. We can be found on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram as at avpgalaxy or Alien vs Predator Galaxy, versus as in VS dot. We also have a podcast, generally bi-monthly, which can be found in video form on this YouTube channel, or it can be found on any of the usual podcasting platforms. That is just the Alien vs Predator Galaxy podcast, versus as in VS dot. Thank you everybody for watching.